Welcome to the SportsSteady podcast. Today, we got a couple topics we're going to talk about. I'm going to start with the NBA. We're going to get to the NFL, Lamar Jackson, and the whole contract situation. I'm going to give my thoughts. I'm going to give my opinions on that, or missing the big picture on that. First, I want to start with the NBA. It's been suspended because he was seen on Instagram Live with a gun. There's an investigation going on right now currently by the NBA as well as the local police in Denver and all this other stuff. And he's a man and it's legal to carry a gun. And then there's other people who are trying to explain hey, John Morant has to follow NBA. He signed a contract. When you sign a contract with a billion-dollar corporation like the NBA, there's stipulations in the contract. And in that CBA collective bargaining agreement, you can't. There's local laws, state laws, then there's NBA law. And when a company gives you millions and millions of dollars, you have to follow their laws, right? That trumps every other law. They're gonna investigate, find out how John Morant got the gun. Did he bring it with him on the road? Could have had the gun and met up with him. Either way, they're gonna investigate that. But whether he was intoxicated. On the video, they got to investigate that too. At a club, late at night. This is bad either way. It doesn't matter if he broke the law or not. This is still bad on John Morant. And this is a pattern of behaviors that have been building up since, I guess, last year when he had the many allegations against him for punching a kid, bringing a gun, threatening a gun to that kid, allegedly, and then the whole situation with the Finish Line store with his mom, and then the Indiana Pacers situation. So this guy's had a pattern of stuff building up over time, and now the NBA said, hey, we got to do something about this. Well, too little, too late, if you ask me, but at least they're deciding to do something, and we'll see what the investigation comes out with. Honestly, I don't think the investigation is going to bring out nothing. I think the NBA is kind of being phony here because they know. Can you really prove, unless his friends say, yeah, the guy was drunk? His friends are not going to say that. They're going to protect him. They're going to lie for him because he's the breadwinner. So the investigation is not going to go far on that. The only thing they could do is say, hey, find out, did you bring the gun from on the road? And maybe one of his homeboys will say, no, it was my gun. I brought the gun, and, he didn't bring it with him. There's going to be many ways to get out of this. So this investigation is probably not going to lead to much. But even if that's the case, I think the NBA still needs to put this guy on the sideline. So that's all I'm saying. But there are people out there that are saying that Morant is innocent and he's being picked on because he's black. There's been race issues brought up with that. They're saying that the guy's being picked on. I don't think it has anything to do with race. I mean, most of the league is black. If anything, I think he was getting away with stuff. He was getting privilege. So that's my thoughts on John Morant. I did a whole video on John Morant. You can find it on YouTube. On SportsSteady TV channel. I talked about John Morant and what I thought. That was before the gun incident, so I think I would refer back to my original comments on that. You can go look up the videos on SportsSteady TV on YouTube and on Rumble. SportsSteady Live on Rumble. So now let's transition over to the MVP talk. With Kendrick Perkins. There's a big thing going on with Kendrick Perkins, J.J. Redick, then Charles Barkley got involved, and, there's been a friction back and forth between the old timers and the new timers, first of all, about the NBA and the league and which the league is better. Can guys play? J.J. Redick has said some crazy stuff over the last few weeks about Larry Bird couldn't play today, or he wasn't a great shooter, and then there's plumbers and all this other stuff. So J.J. Redick has been in hot water now. He's come back around a bit, and he's now defending, saying that he's on the opposite side of the argument with Kendrick Perkins, because Kendrick Perkins is saying that how these white players win the MVP, they're winning because they're white, and not pointing out the factors that you go back to look to the MVPs, even the ones where Jokic won, even though people say, well, he was only a 6 seed, his teams weren't that good, he didn't win a playoff series, why he's not being held to the same pedestal. I can make the case that if all these top players played 70, 85 games, Jokic probably doesn't win both of those MVPs because the other guys play more games. Like Embiid could have won the MVP last year, but the problem was Embiid only played like 60-something games. Like, you got to play more games. Even this year, while they said Embiid's in the top 3, he still won't. He still, by the end of the season, he probably would have played about 60 games, 65, 66, 67 games, which does not put him in the MVP discussion. You cannot miss over 10 games in the season and be considered a legit MVP. You shouldn't be able to win it, especially if there's guys who are playing 70-plus games and are putting up good stats and are leading their teams. So, yes, Jokic is going to win the MVP again. And there's going to be a big cry about it. Now, though, he was already clinched to win it with about 15, 20 games left. Now, this is before all the outrage about how Jokic is winning it because he's white. So, will that affect the voters this year? Will they change their vote? Will they say, you know what? Perkins got a point. Maybe we should not let him win. And then they may not make him win. But I really don't see any argument for anyone else. Because if Embiid wins it, for example, playing like 68 games, 66 games, that's going to lower the standard of MVPs. Because if a guy could win MVP playing 66 games, why can't a guy win that plays 55 games? I think they need to stay consistent and keep. And then there will be also not holding accountable for guys who low manage. So that means a guy can say, well, I can low manage for 2 weeks and still be involved and still win the MVP. No. Jokic should win the MVP. Keep it consistent because the guy plays on the court. He plays. And that's the biggest factor. I think the most important factor to win MVP is to be available. Not playing, low managing, getting hurt, that doesn't help you to be the MVP, in my opinion. And you shouldn't win MVP if you're not on the court. So, I don't think it's race related. I just think that Jokic is a really good player. He's put up crazy numbers in an era that's pretty weak. Considering, the era is watered down in my opinion. I know a lot of guys talk about, the athletes today are faster, they're better shooters, they're stronger, and all this other stuff. That means jack shit in the grand scheme of things because the overall level of basketball has changed. If you really thought that the guys today were that much better, then they wouldn't have needed to change the rules to help these guys score a lot more points. They would have been good enough to do it. They would have been good enough to do it. The fact that they needed to change the rules, less defense. Guys are not playing defense. Have you watched some of the games? These guys are standing, like, the offense starts, and they're like 4 guys at the 3-point line. Just waiting. 4 guys. And then you got the big roaming down in the paint a little bit. There's no movement hardly. That's why you see guys like Curry who moves around. He's elite at it because he's the only one doing it. There's only a few guys in the league that are doing like Curry's running around. You said it's easy to set 1,000 picks for Curry when half of the teams are just standing around the 3-point line. They're just standing there, waiting. And Golden State was one of the only teams that had that motion offense when they moved around. San Antonio, the same thing. Over the years when the Spurs were good, they moved the ball. They moved. That's why they kept winning games. And I just don't understand that I just don't understand the logic of, oh man, the NBA's better today. I just don't see it. I really don't. Look, here's the deal. The guys today are not as good from an IQ standpoint. Yeah, guys shoot more threes today, but I can guarantee you Larry Bird played today, he would probably average 40. Right? Michael Jordan would average 40 easily because Jordan got to the lane. Like, you put 1988 Michael Jordan in today's NBA. Because you're not, first of all, you're not stopping Jordan because nobody's guarding Michael, right? Nobody today can guard Michael because they keep Michael in front of them. There's no bigs today to challenge Michael in the paint. You saw all those crazy acrobatic, those type of shots that MJ used to do, like, because he was trying to avoid the defense. He would have an open lane to the defense. He would probably score 20 points a night easily just from the paint because he would just get to the hole. He had cat-like reflexes. This guy was so quick. I didn't even realize how quick Michael Jordan was, how quick he get up in the air. There's no bigs today because they're all hanging out in the three-point line. There's no bigs that will be able to stop MJ in the paint. We had some elite centers in the 80s and 90s, and Michael would go right to the lane. Especially in the 80s. I mean, this guy would just fly into the lane and score. And then if he doesn't score, he's getting to the free throw line. So he would cash in on that. That's another 10 points. So you're talking about like 30 points easy just from free throws. And I really believe he would be able to hit a 3 or 2 a game if he really needed to, because he would work on that. Right? This adjusted to the that he played in. Remember in the 80s, drive to the lane, got to the hole. When he was getting physical, beat down a bit, he adjusted his game, developed his mid-range jumper, which made him even more deadlier in the early 90s, going into the mid-90s. And when his athleticism got a little bit down, I mean, he was still the best on the court. He was deadly with the mid-range because he worked on it. He understood that was the game played at that time. The transformation from this guy's game from the mid-80s going into the 90s, you telling me he wouldn't been able to adjust to the new era of three-point shooting if he needed to? I think he very well would have been able to adjust. He would have been good enough to where you would not have left him open. You wouldn't have been able to leave him open. You would have had to guard him. Either way. And he would blow by you anyway, so it wouldn't matter. But let's just say if he needed to hit a 3 or 2, he would do it. He proved that already against Portland in the finals. So the guy had the complete game. His game translated to just about any era. So, and Larry Bird, I think, is the same way. Larry Bird was already a good three-point shooter. He would have been even better because he would have worked on that. Like, it's almost like they're trying to say these guys didn't work hard. I mean, the best players in the league in the 80s and 90s, they all worked. The game's transformed from era to the eras that they played in. Look at Larry Bird. When Larry Bird had a bad back, it was still very effective in Boston towards the late end of his career, even though he wasn't the old Bird, but he was still good enough. Then he had like 40 with a bad back against Portland and Clyde Drexler. I believe this was like early 90s. I can't remember exactly, but I have to look it up. But the guy was like towards the end of his career. He was still showing that he could put up big numbers. And he adjusted. All those guys adjust. The great players adjust their games to the competition. Right? I mean, Michael Jordan at 50 was like destroying his Charlotte Bobcat players. He was like annihilating them in practice to the point where they were so embarrassed. This guy was annihilating his lottery pick in practice at 50. You saw what he was doing at 38, 39, 40 in the NBA with the Wizards. I mean, it's just laughable to think that those guys couldn't play today when the league is basically wide open for anybody to step in. But I just disagree with the whole notion that those old timers couldn't play today, the great ones. Could any one of those guys back then play today? I wouldn't say all of them, because some of them, but I think a lot more. I would think almost every great player, every all-star, everybody that became an all-star. Think about it. You put Mitch Richmond in today's game. Mitch Richmond, Hall of Famer, shooting guard, one of the best two guards in the league during the Jordan era. You put him today and give him the volume shooting the threes that other guys are getting. Are you kidding me? You put Chris Mullin in today's NBA. Chris Mullin at the peak of his scoring, lethal shooter, was putting up 25, 26 a game. All right, people forget about Chris Mullin, how good he was. No one talks about Chris Mullin unless you live in like New York, St. John's area. But this guy was a scorer. This guy was a sniper. He could shoot with the best of them. Put Chris Mullin today, he'd probably be one of the best. Glenn Rice, 90s. Glenn Rice today, and his shooting, come on. And we're not even naming the top guys. We're naming really good players, all-star players. Right? I don't even have to name the top guys. I don't have to name the Jordans and the Barkleys and the Malones. We can name other guys who are not really talked about. Like I said, Glenn Rice, Chris Mullin. Should you put Tim Hardaway in today's NBA? Tim Hardaway already had that game with that crossover, flashy. He was a good shooter. Terrell Brandon. Drop Terrell Brandon in this era. Right? I mean, these are just all-star guys that are not like superstars, and you dump them in today's NBA. All those guys. So we gotta be realistic here when we try to disrespect the 80s and 90s era. Like I believe the 80s and 90s were the best eras in league history. And many of those guys, put Mark Price in today's NBA. You kidding me? Mark Price would be an all-star in today's NBA. He would be one of the best shooters in the league, probably the best shooter. Right? And Mark Price gets overlooked. Kevin Johnson. You put go look at Kevin Johnson, what he was doing in his era. He might be one of the most overlooked players in his era. Right? You put Kevin Johnson in today's NBA? Come on. I mean, I don't know what to tell you guys. I mean, hey, maybe you guys know more than what I'm talking about here, but I'm just saying, a lot of those guys' games translate to today very, very well. Very well. So, but I don't think that Jokic just winning MVPs because he's white. It makes no sense. I think that whole argument is ridiculous. I think Jokic is probably one of the best players in the league. And a lot of that is due to the fact that he's on the court. A lot of those other guys take games off. And when you're not playing, you're not going to be looked at as a top guy because you're not available. So that's how I look at it. Coming up, we're going to be talking NFL. We're going to translate a little bit to the NFL. Lamar Jackson contract situation. And a lot of people online are making this about race because Daniel Jones got the big contract. We're going to talk about why, another ridiculous comparison, and why the Giants might have gave Daniel Jones his money, and why Lamar Jackson may not be getting the contract he wants, and why he still haven't gotten that long-term deal. We'll talk about that coming up on the SportsSteady podcast. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right. Welcome back to the SportsSteady podcast that Lamar Jackson, we're going to talk about real quick in the last half of this show. Now, you're worth whatever someone's willing to pay, right? It's 32 NFL jobs, so these jobs are very limited. So from that standpoint, Lamar Jackson is going to get paid, right? You would think. How much? I don't know. That's between him and the team, and I do think that by him not having an agent is hurting his chances of his reasons on why he hasn't gotten his contract yet. While there has been a little bit of a decline at his play, he is probably going to end up signing for an amount of money that he would have gotten anyway. Say if he would have had an agent, they negotiate terms. I don't know, was it like 5%, 8%? I don't know what the contract and agents percentages are, but let's just say if he had an agent and he would have got the deal that he wanted, he still would have come out with the same amount anyway. But because the guy doesn't want to cough up 5-10% of his earnings, he's now going into negotiations blindly. And the teams know this. I mean, why would, if you're negotiating with a player who doesn't have no representation, you see he's in a slight decline, it's not really pressure for you to sign him. You feel like, look, it's not like you're winning the Super Bowls, so do we really need to rush to give you a big the money that you want? And if your sole evidence of, hey, I deserve more because I'm better than Deshaun Watson, is probably not going to cut it because Deshaun Watson fell into a situation where the Cleveland Browns were desperate. And every NFL owner was not happy about that. I can tell you right now. They did not like the fact that the Cleveland Browns jumped out the window and decided, hey, we're going to go get a quarterback. We're going to get this guy right now. So Lamar is negotiating from a standpoint of, hey, Deshaun's got his money. I want mine. I want the same amount. I'm better. I got an MVP on my belt. But this is where this is where the agent comes in and is able to sell. Because the agent job is to sell the client as what he can do moving forward, instead of saying, hey, my guy used to be an MVP. That's the only thing Lamar can sell. I was an MVP a couple years in my second season or a couple years back. You're not an MVP anymore. I mean, you started your career 29-7. Pretty good stats across the board. But in your last 24 games, you're 15-9. You've been sacked over 64 times in your last 24 starts. 64 sacks in 24 starts. That's a lot of sacks. The QB rating is 59. Your 33 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, which is not that bad, but it's not elite, right? I mean, you give a guy 24 starts, 33 and 20. That's middle of the road production for a quarterback. That's not elite production. That's not elite when you talk about like Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady type stats. That's not elite. And 64 sacks for a guy who's supposed to be a good running quarterback, that's a lot of sacks. That means you're taking hits. That means you're getting hit. You're getting put on the ground. So to invest in a quarterback who's getting sacked, right? Who's getting sacked and is not winning at the same rate as he was and his first athlete winning that MVP. Is he still one of the best quarterbacks in the league from a statistical standpoint on paper? Yeah, you can make the case. He's still pretty good, right? He's not terrible, but he's a lot closer to the middle of the pack than he is at the top of the pack. You get what I'm saying? He's 26 years old. So how many more years does he have at elite status before his running ability starts to slow down? He's 26 now. So you would think that at the rate he's going, he probably has about a good 4 years, right? A good 4 more years at his speeding around. And if he's getting sacked 64 times, that means that even at 26, he's not getting out of sacks, which he would need to tone that down. I mean, he's being sacked more now than he was in the first couple years, right? So his first couple years in the league, like his best season, right? I guess you could say the year that he won MVP. His first full start. His first year he didn't really start much. But even in his first season when he started 7 games, he got sacked 16 times. Right? His sack rate was 8.6. That's still high for a guy only with 7 starts. Right? So his MVP season, sacks went back up, but he did play more games. He played 15 games. His sack rate was down to 5.4, which was his best season. Statistically, 13-2, 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, right? QBR was at 83. That's his best season. And that's the only year he's been great. That's the only season that he's been like completely great. Like in top elite level. So he's had 1 elite season out of 5. And he wants to be paid as an elite receiver. So if I have a salesman who had one great year out of 5, do I pay him top salesman money? Right? Think about this from a business standpoint, from a sales standpoint. Right now, he's had one elite sales season out of 5. That is not an indication on what the next. If this is any, that's not an indication that he will be back to that level in the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, at his rate, at 26 years old, what are the chances that he returns to his 22-year-old year in the next 5 years when he's 26, 27, 28, 29, 30? What are the chances that he would give you that production again? And even in that year, 3,100 yards, right? Like I said, 36-6. Even in that year, it's like, okay, it's an elite year, but do you want a guy who's going to take sacks, right? His last 3 seasons has been sacked 29 times, 38 times, and then last season, 26 times. So the sacks were down from a year ago, from the previous season, right? He seems to be back on track, but not back to the point where he was. And he only played 12 games in the last 2 seasons, 12 each. So 24 in the last 2 years. So this is a guy you want to commit to. Is he on the decline? Is a real question to ask if you're going to commit to $250, $300 million. It's a legitimate question to ask. I mean, this is not hating. This is not saying, oh, because the guy is black, like people are trying to allude to because of the whole Daniel Jones thing. The problem with the big difference between Daniel Jones and Lamar Jackson is that they guarantee money, right? Because I'm pretty sure Baltimore wouldn't mind paying him the large amount of money, but do they want to guarantee the large amount of money? That's the question, right? They want to give him a deal that, yeah, we'll give you we'll put a lot of money in the contract, but it's not all going to be guaranteed. And for a player like Lamar Jackson, who in the last 3 years has been pretty, I wouldn't say he's been great, but he's been in the top half, but he's much closer to the half than he is at the top over the last 3 years. We just have to be honest. So, and like I said, going into the late end of your 20s, where the running may not be there longer, can you at least throw for 3,000 yards? Can you throw for 4,000 yards? Because that's what might need to happen for you to be an elite quarterback again. You've never done that. He went over 3,000 once. So, but it's a hard sell. Like, the agent is usually where it comes in. He needs to hire an agent, right? It's hard to sell coming off a season where you throw for 2,224 yards and you're asking to be paid like an elite quarterback. Yeah, we know you got legs, you can run, but that hasn't translated to playoff victories. You know? You've been to the playoff 3 times. You're 1-3 in the postseason. That's another thing. You really want to be paid with the elite quarterbacks? 1-3 in the postseason, 19 sacks. Right? So, you got to ask yourself, what are you asking for? 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions in the postseason. Your postseason numbers are dreadful from a QB standpoint. Completing, 55% overall, because you had that big jump in the last 2 playoff games. But overall, 55% completions. I mean, this is not the recipe. This is the resume going into the negotiation table, where you're trying to get a guaranteed contract of $250 million. So if you're doing this in your first 4 playoff starts, how much better does it get in the next 4? Right? This is your last time you've been in playoffs was in 2020. We're in 2023 now. So you don't have any playoff things to show for it. You don't. Your last 3 years, your numbers are coming down a bit. Now, is it his fault that he had that great second year, so now he's being judged from that? Probably not, but that's reality. If you come out the gate strong, you got to sell yourself moving forward. You got to continue it. Right? Yeah, in the music industry, you can have a one-hit wonder and drag that out for like a decade, right? And make a bunch of money. But after a while, people will talk about, he's a one-hit wonder. That's it. Only one big hit. That's Lamar Jackson right now. Lamar Jackson is the one-hit wonder that sold a bunch of copies of a record and is coming out the gate, and he hasn't put out a hit record since. And he's living off of that. He's trying to live off of that MVP season. Because that's all you keep hearing. And every year that we get away from that MVP season, it's not going to be valuable in the conversation anymore. Because that's all you heard the last couple of years. Oh, Lamar's still elite. He won an MVP. Like, that's all people kept saying. But how many years are we going to keep saying that? After this season, if he has a subpar, good year, but not elite year, right? And the Ravens either lose in the playoffs or they miss it again, then what happens? They're going to say, you can't keep using the MVP as an excuse. Yes, he was an MVP years ago. And NFL is a what have you done for me lately league. And when you talk about what have you done for me lately, Lamar Jackson's been mediocre lately. And that's just the reality. And while Daniel Jones, who people laugh at and say, how dare the Giants give him that money? They could have just went out and got Lamar Jackson. He's better. Or coming up with the laughing about Daniel Jones' money. Well, Daniel Jones at least throws over 3,000 yards. Daniel Jones at least, had his best season when he knew he was up for money. That's how you do it. Right? You have your best year. You got to remember, this is the first season that Daniel Jones has had, what's the coordinator name? And what was the coach name? The one that helped Josh Allen in Buffalo. I forget his name. But this is the first year he's had him. So it's like, look, coach, combination with a QB, having a career season, right in time to get the payday. So it's not that every team is different. Every situation is different. Is Daniel Jones better than Lamar Jackson? Look, some people can make the case that they think so. Some people will say no. But all we know is that it's what have you done for me lately. And Daniel Jones is going, his stock is rising up, while Lamar's is going down. And Daniel Jones has completed 68% of his passes. When you're a quarterback, your job is to complete passes. All right? Daniel Jones only had 5 interceptions to his 15 touchdowns, completions. You complete passes, don't turn the ball over in the NFL. Yes, he's taken a lot of sacks, 44, which is a big number. But I guess the Giants will work on that, and maybe they'll give him a better offensive line. Who knows? But either way, that's the Giants situation. They found a guy that fits with the coaches. It's not saying that they believe that, and plus the guarantee money is a lot less than what Lamar's asking for. If Lamar would have took that same contract, Baltimore would probably say, yeah, you want that? Sure. I really believe the guarantee money is the big factor here on why Lamar is not signed. But the further away from the MVP year you go, the harder it's going to be for him to negotiate. And that's why he needs an agent. Because, like I said, the agent can sell. The agent has credibility with the teams and the organizations. So they can say, hey, look, my client, he's going to get this. He can do that. And that can kind of dictate negotiations because teams, the GM or the owners trust the agent and his selling point because he has other clients that worked out. Like, say, if the agent had a client who also had players that, hey, we got this guy on a good deal. Sign my guy here. I can get you this guy later on a bargain. Like, there's different ways to work out negotiations. So when the agent says, give my guy this money, I'll make sure I got 3 other guys who are on the team. I can get them to come back on a favorable deal. We can still keep the roster together. Like, the agent can maneuver that way. But when it's just the player negotiating with the team, there's no trust there because it's like, because at the end of the day, you're the player. Your job is to play football, right? You don't have that same connection with the ownership when it comes to negotiations. You don't understand that world, right? So I think if he would have hired an agent, he would have got his money. At least if he would have got something close. And that's his downfall. And let's be clear here that I think that the agents around the league are also probably like, hey man, they're watching this closely because if Lamar was able to get his money, that would definitely make the agents look bad because they're like, damn, this guy got his own money. They need to hire one of us. That means players after Lamar Jackson or even current players will fire their agent to represent themselves just to keep that extra 5, 10%, whatever the percentage is. And that would mean people would be out of jobs. And that cannot be good. That would not be a good thing for the NFL, for the agents. So there's a lot of different things here that are tied up into Lamar's contract. And now if he doesn't get the amount that he asked for and he signs a deal that's lucrative, then everybody's like, oh, they save face. Right? Because it's like, okay, good. He tried to negotiate. He lost. He had to take the money they offered. So they're watching. And right now, there's no team out there that's offering Lamar any money because they understand that, one, the owners also know that if we allow the Ravens to deal with it, we can try to reset the market. You know what I'm saying? Because if Lamar was to somehow get the money that he wanted in the guarantee mode and do it without an agent, that would destroy the rest of the league for us. Oh my God, like we just gave the players all the power. And they don't want to do that. So is there possibly some behind the scenes situation where they're like, hey, a little bit of collusion to make sure this doesn't happen? Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, because there are a lot of people that have jobs that are tied to this. The future of negotiations and contracts are on the line. Everybody's watching. Can Lamar break the barrier and give the players 100% empowerment? Because that's exactly what happened. If he got that guarantee that he wanted, it would be pandemonium. Everybody would be rushing like, you're fired. I'm gonna represent myself. I'm gonna get the contract I want, and I'm able to do it. Don't need an agent. So we'll see what happens. I think he's gonna re-sign with Baltimore. They'll probably tag him or whatever. But there's a lot of talk around the league about who should offer money. Like I see, I'm looking on social media now. People are asking, should the Patriots make an offer? I hope the hell they don't. Please do not do that. Do not even entertain that ridiculousness. No team should make an offer. Because why would you? It's not worth it to pay this guy a boatload of money. Then you got to give up your contract. Then you got to give up 2 draft picks. No team's giving up draft picks and then have to pay this guy all this money. It's just not going to happen. So, that's that. But I don't know what you guys think. Do you think Lamar Jackson is going to get the money he wants? And would you want your team to go after Lamar Jackson? I'm a Patriot fan, so I say no to New England. Do not bring this guy in. Please don't. Please do not. Because he's heading downhill. I know trends when I see it. And you know what the funny thing about this? Because race has become a factor in this because, so RG3 on Twitter right now, RG3 is a former NFL player. He understands, at least I think he understands NFL contracts. He understands how things go and the timing of negotiations. And I wonder if he posted this on purpose to cause people to react. And I think he did. Because this guy cannot be this out of touch. So RG3 posted it up on Twitter yesterday. He put up Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones' stats, and he went down the line, and it shows obviously that Lamar Jackson's stats over the career stats overall are better than Lamar Jackson's. Better than Daniel Jones, which no one's disputing that. Then he says, if teams don't want Lamar, why were the Giants afraid they want Daniel Jones? Now, right? That's what he says. Trying to compare the two situations, knowing exactly, and then give any context to why the Giants gave Daniel Jones the money that they gave them. Why would he think teams want Daniel Jones? Right? Come on. So, of course, the Twitter does what Twitter does. Now, one person made a good point. Chris Nelson on Twitter said, Daniel Jones wasn't asking for a 5-year, $1 billion guaranteed deal with his mom representing him. Now, he was being tongue-in-cheek, but he makes a good point. Because Lamar wants guaranteed money, he wants a large guaranteed money, and Daniel Jones wasn't asking for that kind of money. One person said they locked up their guy. They didn't have to tag him. He's worth the $40 million to them, not so much about him versus Lamar. Right. Everybody has their guy. This is what Keith said. Keith's a nighttime radio guy from WFAN, Keith McPherson. Means that it shows terrible she still they don't pay people based on just their worth either. So people are saying so people are trying to make the equation of the two quarterbacks, but you got to understand that each quarterback is worth whatever their organization. Like Daniel Jones' value to the Giants could be a lot different than Daniel Jones' value to another team, right? Especially when you're already working with the guy. Because each quarterback fits with the system and the coaching and the organization. There's 32 jobs, which means that you have to find a guy that fits with your team. He may not be the best quarterback in the league, but if he's the best fit for your team, then you lock him in. And that's what the Giants did with Daniel Jones. They felt, whether they're right or wrong, I guess we'll find out in the next few years, but they felt that Daniel Jones had enough improvement. They felt that his improvement was enough to pay him now because he's trending up. Think about it. So let's just say if he come back next year and has an unbelievable year. Second year with the new coach, they more in lock, they more in sync. He comes back and has an explosive season. Say if he goes 30 touchdowns and 5 picks, 4,000 yards, right? Now he goes back and, hey, I want a bigger deal now. So you have to time it, right? You have to understand that, hey, do we really want to chance this? And I guarantee the coach that was in Buffalo, who's now coaching the Giants, probably understood, like, look, Daniel Jones, I could see a little bit of Josh Allen in him as far as like his progression. If he's turned out to be Josh Allen type, this could be good for us, and let's lock him in now before we wait till he becomes elite. Then we gotta pay him a whole bunch of money, even more money. So that was probably what they were thinking. And I don't see an issue with that. I don't see the comparison to what RG3 is talking about. So RG3, another tweet RG3 put out. Let's see if we can find this. He goes, yesterday, same thing. Lamar Jackson is an ununanimous MVP, has led the league in passing touchdowns, is 26 years old, is 45 and 16 as a starter, and all the QB needy teams are saying they aren't interested. Don't smell right to me. See? That MVP stuff again. That was like 4 years ago. This is almost like Cam Newton all over again. Remember when Cam Newton was available? Oh, you got to get Cam Newton. He's a former MVP. Or the same thing with Colin Kaepernick. He led the 49ers to the Super Bowl. And like, it's just all this past stuff. And RG3 is just such a diva. Right? He just comes off with a lot of feminine energy on this. The Lamar Jackson disrespect is outrageous. And he goes, congratulations, Daniel Jones. Get your money, boo-boo. Get your money, boo-boo. This is a grown man saying this stuff. He's talking like a woman. That's what a woman would say. That's a black woman's terminology. Get your money, boo-boo. What is this guy watching Housewives of Hip-Hop Housewives or some shit? Like, this is just weird that he's really going all out. And about it, these are like 4 or 5 tweets in a row. He's talking about Lamar Jackson. Like, he's basically and we're talking about millions of dollars here, like, right? Lamar Jackson still going to be paid a lot of money to play football. But RG3, who didn't live up to his potential because he got hurt, couldn't stay healthy, Lamar's on that same path. Essentially, he's one injury away from his career being over. So, and RG3 knows this. That's why he's trying to make this like a racial thing without saying it. It's just so strange to see. Like, there is a lot of, and this is a guy who's been in the NFL space, right? So he should know better than to try to, like, what are you messing with Daniel Jones for? Like, Daniel Jones had nothing to do with Lamar Jackson's situation, right? His Daniel Jones's relationship with the Giants is not even, doesn't even come up to, it's not even on the same, shouldn't even be in the same conversation with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, everything that he's going through right now is his fault, right? He could have stopped this a long time ago. He was trying to he thought he had the Ravens by the balls. And you got to understand, the NFL, they're not going to cow down to you like that. Especially when, like I said, now if you were elite MVPs or Pro Bowls last 2-3 years, you had something to negotiate on. Your negotiation skill, the power is losing every year that you get away from that MVP season and you don't really produce. You don't have a bargaining chip. Might be his last year where he really has a bargaining space. If he comes back, same stats, mediocre again, no playoff wins, no Super Bowl appearances, how much more of a bargaining is he going to have? You know? And RG3 saying, hey, all these teams that need quarterbacks. Well, Lamar doesn't fit on all those teams, right? I mean, he doesn't fit on many teams. There's only so many teams that he might fit on. And the question would be, will those teams be willing to pay him all that money when they won't be able to pay other players is the same situation Baltimore is in. So you want to be Baltimore? Oh, yeah, we'll bring RG3, we'll give him $200 million, but then we can't go out and get receivers. Because he doesn't make receivers better. That's another thing. It's hard to make receivers better when you're only throwing for 2,200 yards. He doesn't make receivers better. How can you call yourself an elite quarterback when you can't make wide receivers better? You got to make them better, especially if they're not going to have money to pay you to pay them. If they pay you, they're not going to be able to go out and pay another receiver top money. So more likely they're going to end up getting guys that the bargain basement deal, and it'll be your job to elevate that guy. But you can't do it. You can't make any receiver better. Yeah, talent-wise, skill set, yeah, you can run, you're fast, you can elude defenders, but can you make wide receivers better? Can you make a wide receiver go from mediocre to all-pro? You can do that, I'll give you all the money you want. If you can't, you ain't getting crap. You shouldn't get it. So, that's that. I'm going to wrap up here, the SportsSteady podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SportsSteadyPC, SportsSteady Live on Rumble, YouTube at SportsSteady TV and SportsSteady. Of course, 2 channels on YouTube. Gridiron Steady on YouTube. I know they got some stuff coming up soon over there. And you could follow me on twitter.com/SportsSteady, Sean Brooks TV. Excuse me. All right, folks. Have a good day. Peace out. Don't forget, this is the SportsSteady podcast. Sports page run by sports fans.